Status, the captain yelled across the bridge. The XO, without turning his head, said, Sir, we've located the ship. It's only .0035 light years out. Good, the captain said, turning over. Helm, time to intercept. The helmsman, without turning his head, said, 21 minutes, sir. The captain retorted, Helm, I think I misheard you. I'm sure you just said less than 20. The helmsman simply said, Aye, sir. Everyone suddenly needed to reach out and grab something as the ship lurched under the strain of the sublight engines. Everyone is immediately pushed around as the inertial dampeners struggle to keep up with the engines. The ship begins to dance through the debris field and the asteroids. That's where the pirates were hiding. The XO yells out, Prepare point defenses, comms. I want a full active sensor sweep at all times. Those motherless bastards had plenty of time to lay a trap. Double layer across the bow and make sure that the helms has everything. Everyone is still scurrying about as they get closer to their prey. Every man on board is seething at the chance to get their hands on the pirates regardless of whichever species they happen to be. As the human ship gracefully maneuvers through the field, the bow is always aimed at the pirates no matter which way they turn, leapfrogging up, dancing around, but still keeping the bow towards the pirates. As they do, they're still increasing speed, and the human ship slowly gets closer and closer as they push the gravitic engines to their absolute limits to make sure they can get closer, and finally, they get visuals on their prey. The pirate ship is seen, and a quick scan clearly shows that it's been damaged from the battle, so much so that they've actually shut off the engines and restart them to keep them from overheating. Looking across the hull, scorch marks and impact holes are all over the place. As everyone is a little dumbfounded at what they can see, how can this bird continue to fly? The captain turns his head sharply and says, Comms, what about the other pirates? Any status yet? The comms officer, leaning back a little bit as he's holding his headset close, turns slightly and says, It's just coming in now, sir. He pauses as he listens and also reads what's coming across his screen. Confirmed, sir. All the others have been engaged. Yes, confirmed. All 16 that made it off of Earth. One moment, sir. Yeah, 7. 7 have actually had drive failures and have surrendered, sir. Most likely due to too much damage, I would wager. Let's see. 1 exploded. 1 second. Yes, the packages were recovered, sir. Yes, they were in fact recovered. 6 have actually surrendered once their ship has been breached, and let's see, 2 others fought to the death, but all packages recovered, sir. The captain leans back a little bit and says, Good. This means this is the last one, and no wonder the damn things are so desperate. The comms suddenly yell out, Contact, 10 o'clock high. More at 7 o'clock. Drones and fighters coming in. The captain turns, Helm, steady on course. We are not losing those packages. XO, make sure we get those skies clear. Aye, sir, the XO said. All weapon stations, you are clear to engage. Hostiles on approach. Light 'em up. The weapons all around the ship begin to rise from their protected positions, each one beginning to move about as the system automatically checks itself to make sure everything is functioning. As the turrets begin to target the incoming fighters, missiles are launched and begin to track the hostile targets. Everyone can watch on the screen as missiles get closer and closer to the incoming enemy. Everyone holding their breath so tight that even with the engines on full, you could hear a mouse fart inside that bridge. Splash 1, Splash 2, Splash 3 and 4, Splash 5, the comms officer starts yelling out. Then the radar station said, They appear to be withdrawing, sir. The XO turned and said, Then they can die tired. Is there any chance they're going to get out of range? The weapons control station said, Those motherless little peckerheads aren't getting away from us, sir. A moment later, another volley, this time drones, is launched. These spherical hunter-killers are far slower than any missile used, yet they do come with their own countermeasures. which means they cannot be taken down so easy. Once they get close to an enemy, they explode with the force of a 4-kiloton nuke. The resulting omnidirectional blast of ball bearings is far more than enough to penetrate any ship's hull below cruiser class at least. This is far more than enough than what's needed to take out a corvette or two. Before being destroyed, whether out of desperation or spite, one of the corvettes spun around and fired on the human destroyer. Inside the destroyer here, "Vampire! Vampire! Vampire!" With this, the helmsman simply moves the ship out of the way by dropping towards its ventral side as fast as possible. This again made the inertial dampeners strain and made many of the crew lift off the deck plate. However, this did allow the shot to pass harmlessly overhead. It's at this moment the destroyer finally clears the asteroids and can see they are about 5 minutes from the pirate ship. The captain says, "Comms, any words from the pirates? Are they ready to surrender?" The comms simply listens close and says, "Just the opposite, sir. They're telling us to come and take them." Maybe they've been watching too many historical movies. The captain replies, "Well, send this message to them." "Okay, ready or not, here we come." The pirates are sent the message, and without stopping their forward inertia, they flip and bring their main weapons to bear. The captain sees this and says, "Take out their weapon emplacements, but I want that ship intact. We can't damage the packages." The XO immediately came in. "Weapon stations, target the pirates' weapons only, precision shots only. You all know what packages they are carrying." Normally, there would be a reverberation throughout the ship as weapons fired all over the ship, but instead, only one station fired. The shot ripped across the void and just barely stuck a pirate point defense cannon. Not enough to rip the cannon off, but definitely enough to disable it, as it simply sat there, dangle-dangling across the hull. This was good, but there were plenty more. And there was also the main fixed cannon they needed to worry about. As the destroyer approached the large pirate ship, the occasional reverberation of one of their own cannons firing could be heard. As they got closer and closer, the helm kept looking at the fixed cannon. This energy weapon fires concentrated photon in a plasma-induced gravitational confinement field. This made the helmsman pucker factor go up much higher, as a point-blank strike is hard enough to punch through battleship armor. The destroyer, even with its electronic dampener field on maximum, will not be able to withstand a strike like that. As the pirate ship turned to gain a targeting solution on the destroyer, the crew are tossed about as the helmsman does what he does best, and he avoids being targeted. Those outside of the bridge are taken completely by surprise and end up being thrown hard against the walls and bulkheads, as they definitely don't know which way they're going to be moving. A few are even thrown against the upper deck plating and then down on the bottom, causing many of the hallways to be covered in human blood, but at this point no one really cared. A voice then comes across the squaw. "Sir, permission to leave the ship." The captain responds, "For what purpose, Master Sergeant?" The Master Sergeant on the other side says, "My trigger finger itches really bad, sir, and one of those packages actually belongs to Sergeant Left." The captain paused for just the briefest of moments, realizing the implications of this, and simply said, "Permission granted." At that moment, pods were released from all sides of the ship. For a moment, the pods simply depart from the sides and look as though they're just drifting along with the ship. Then they begin to rotate, and without a second hesitation, they launch forward towards the bulbous pirate ship. The pods close the distance in a matter of seconds as the pirate ship tries desperately to evade, as though they know what's coming. The pods strike all around the large pirate ship, locking on with magnetic couplers, then extending the flaps on all sides, further securing the pod to the ship with hot rivets. This movement, rotating many of the pods into a certain direction, allows the bottom of the pod to be facing the hull. A set of energy blades ignite and rotate, cutting a hole in the ship. Once complete, the drive mechanism on the top of the pod pushes the soldier through the freshly made hole, and both the circular piece of the hull and the fully encapsulated human in the exosuit crash into the ship. It is of note that rarely a drop trooper lands on their feet, which means they have to scramble to their feet and immediately clear the area. Once they're inside, short-range combat is the true name of the game. Shields, shotguns, small submachine guns, plasma throwers, and energy blades are the weapons of choice for every human that gets inside. It is also of note that drop troopers, once aboard an enemy ship, will gravitate heavily towards the energy blade itself. The sight of it is awe-inspiring as you see a massive human in his metal suit simply waving one or two of these things around. Of course, that's not the only thing that surprises them. The heat coming off of it is scary, and everyone quakes in fear at seeing one. They don't even want to be touched by one, as the only thing that's going to happen if a human comes at you with these is you either die fast from your organs exploding once this thing penetrates you, or you die from shock as you are losing pieces of yourself. Many have lost control of their bodily functions and or passed out at the sight of one, and most human soldiers carry two. Heaven help anyone that sees two. One can't even bleed to death from this thing if it strikes you, as every wound is seared shut every time this thing even touches the body. The troopers work through the ship as pirates try to slow them down as best they can, trying to give them time so they can cross into their own territory. The built-in disruptor shields that are in all human armor halt any energy weapons from actually getting through, and the thick plating is enough to stop any projectiles from actually getting through, unless one of the more flexible parts is hidden, and it's difficult at best to do that. With robotic precision of trained movements, the troopers work their way to the heart of the ship. The bridge is always towards the center of the ship, and everyone knows it. The pirates, hell-bent on killing the troopers and returning with their cargo, so in desperation they charge in and strike from all directions. As strong as human armor is, there is limits. The fighting goes from hallway to hatch, room to door, section to bulkhead. Both sides coordinate movements trying to take each other out as quickly and efficiently as possible. During the chaos, the humans found the fixed weapon emplacement and damaged it to the point that it is now non-functional. In fact, they laughed at the idea of the pirates firing it, as it looked like it would burn itself out after simply one shot. However, they didn't want to give pirates even one shot. Even with this small victory, it was still difficult, if not almost impossible, to take the bridge. The pirates were playing this smart, using the directions of the corridors to have overlapping sectors of fire, and it became so much that even the disrupting fields over the human armors would fail under that much stress. It was a stalemate for a few minutes, at least until the pirate ship maneuvered so violently the magnetic lock on the humans' feet was the only reason they could actually stay and put and engage the targets that were, in some cases, laid at their feet. The pirates, not being locked into place, were thrown out of position, many times right in front of the human sights, and this made it very easy to terminate large group of pirates before they could even stand back up, and once these blockades were taken care of, the human soldiers just kept moving forward. The pirates ended up holding only two areas, the bridge and the cargo area, neither of which could be rushed. Rush the cargo holds, and there is a very high risk of damaging the packages. Rush the bridge, and the command crew might end up scuttling the ship. That would be bad. The pirate command crew can hear the human destroyer docking with it, now that they have no ability to maneuver their own ship. The entire pirate ship shakes as the human clamps attach, and the captain of the pirate vessel begins screaming into the radio how trying to take the cargo means that the ship will be destroyed, and how humans must back away. They would not allow the packages to be taken ever. Their lives are not as important as what's there. The humans all rolled their eyes in their respective ways. Some cursed, some laughed. This was an obvious lie, as pirates always care more about their own lives than their cargo. Their nepotism, narcissism, or whatever you want to call it, knows absolutely no bounds. Aboard the human destroyer, the crew listened to the ramblings of this insane pirate captain for a little bit. When the pirate captain finally stopped his rant, a young commsman turned and said, "Does he really think we believe him? I mean, it's not like he's human." Which, of course, got a couple chuckles around the bridge. Aboard the pirate ship, the pirate captain sat nervous but concentrated on the display. He believed that the humans would either withdraw fully or offer terms. Either way, he'd be able to save his own butt. When he stopped hearing human movement outside of the bridge, he believed his terms were going to be coming across the radio. The terms came, of course, as the blast doors were pierced by energy blaze, each one moving in a way that would cut the door to pieces in moments. In fear, the pirate captain reached down and hit a large button to scuttle the ship. Nothing happened. He started to hit it over and over and over again. He was still hitting it as a large metal-covered human burst through the door, sending pieces of the door all over the place and beginning to terminate the crew along with other humans right behind him. The captain was left simply standing there, dumbstruck, as he stared blankly at the humans still unconsciously pressing the button of self-destruction over and over again, not understanding what the hell was going on. As he did this motion, one of the humans walked up to him, and the pirate captain, who just happened to be fluent in human English, looked down and saw the call sign stenciled on the suit standing in front of him. The pirate captain read "Rat's Ass" right before an energy blade was ignited, piercing the abdomen and chest of this strange ape with horns and multiple tendrils for arms. The last thing the pirate captain felt was a sensation of freezing cold pain as the heat from the energy blade burned so hot that the organs it touched instantly boiled and exploded inside the body. After the body fell, the armored soldier raised a metal foot and slammed it down, splattering the captain's testicles all over the deck plating. As he smeared his boot backwards, trying to get some of the crushed testicles off the bottom of his boot, he simply said, "Take that, you motherless bastard." In the cargo bay, a few pirates held out, using the packages as shields. Realizing they couldn't rush in, the squad leader had a different idea. He went back and began releasing the seal on the closest pod, and the air began to get very thin very fast. Since it was standard practice to take the engine room, there was no power to the doors of the hatches. It should be noted that taking the engine room will also locate and disarm the scuttling charge, meaning no matter how many times you send the signal, the charge is not going to detonate. Not only that, but the life support systems are gone too. Inside the cargo bay, the pirates tried to yell for air to be put back on. They began to threaten to destroy the packages, but they also knew it was their only chip to play, the only way they were going to survive. Yet a couple of team leaders had a different way for them to survive. They reached their arms in and held out the spare air for any who surrender. The spare air is a 20-minute rebreather that any drop trooper must carry. It's actually standard practice that each trooper carries 2, where Doc carries at least a dozen. As the first pirate, struggling to breathe, comes up to surrender, another pirate shot him in the back, and this earned that backstabbing pirate an energy bolt to the head for shooting his fellow pirate in the back, which is against their own code. Others began to stumble forward as they started losing their vision and everything was getting strange. Hypoxia was kicking in, and eventually the last were on the ground trying desperately to crawl forward. Seeing this, the armored soldiers walked up to them, picked them all up by the neck, and then shoved the spare air into their face or over their mandibles if they were insectoid. After getting a few breaths, the pirates immediately offered no more resistance as they realized that they were just beaten. On the bridge of the destroyer, everybody waited. They waited to hear something, and then a transmission came through, a voice they recognized. "Pirate ship secured." The captain pressed a button and says, "Status of packages." "Confirming now, sir." There was a long pause before he came back. "Confirm that all packages are safe and accounted for, sir." The captain breathed a sigh of relief. "Confirmed. Coordinate with cargo control and get them secured." "Yes, sir. We will get them on board as soon as possible." "Negative," the captain said. "You'll bring the packages as safely as possible." "Velvet hands, sir." Maneuvering the destroyer a little more so that the cargo bays lined up with each other, the ships are moored together with barely 4 centimeters gap between them. Then, and only then, are the packages brought in. Slowly, one by one, each of the pods are secured by hands working in 0G to assure that nothing is bumped, dropped, damaged, or even scraped. Once secured, it's all quadruply checked by 2 different personnel. The bay is then sealed, pressurized, and the ships are separated from each other. As the destroyer moves away at sublight, the captain is in the cargo bay with one of the medical staff. "All right, Doc, have you got a status for me?" The doc replies, "Yes, sir. The pods are functioning. However, it's not recommended that they remain inside much longer." The captain asks, "Can we jump to FTL?" The doc responds, "Not without causing permanent damage, sir." "Irreparable damage?" the captain says. I need a number, Doc. What do you got?" The doc looked over everything and said, "It would be 80% chance of 1 or more." "All right," the captain said. Get ready to open them up then." Everything is immediately prepped and ready to open the pods, and they make sure they do not jump to FTL. The pods are designed for many things, but constant FTL jumps is not one of them. The captain looks towards the end of the line of pods that are about to be opened, and he sees Sergeant Left. The XO is already next to him, and the XO reads the panel on the pods and then sees the concern on the sergeant's face. The XO turns and says, "I understand your concern, but you can relax, Sergeant. The captain did just give the order to open them up." The sergeant replied, "With all due respect, sir, I can't follow that order. Not until this thing is open." The XO simply turns away, saying, "Understand, Sergeant, stand by." The entire medical staff is present, along with the command staff and a full squad of troopers, although this time they're not wearing armor or carrying any weapons. The staff begin to open the pods by simply placing their hands on the panel and then pressing another button. The pods themselves are genetically sealed, and without human touch, they just won't open. The pods begin to make a bunch of noise as the system shifts and the locking mechanisms begin to release. The sounds of hissing echoes as the pods try to unseal themselves. The doors open slowly to reveal the packages. Inside each of the pod is a perfectly preserved, unclothed human female. Each of them is slowly coming back to their senses as the stasis generators spin down. As they do, each of them opens their eyes to see medical staff and, of course, the soldiers on the far side simply waiting. The medical staff that they see is running sensors over them as the women begin to realize what in the hell is going on. Each of the women once they can be, is aided out of the pods, and once they are, a soldier walks up and hands them a robe and some booties to put on their feet. It's noted that no matter what, deck plating on a ship is simply cold on the feet. On the far end of the line, Sergeant Left is standing there waiting for a woman to be aided out of the pod. He gets up and aids herself a little bit and hands the woman a robe. Still groggy from coming out of stasis, she stumbles putting the robe on a little bit. As she does, the soldier puts the coverings on her feet, and as he stands up directly in front of her, she reads the name on his chest. There is a look of confusion, then shock as her minds begin to process everything. She looks at his face with her eyes opening very wide, and Sergeant Left says, "Hello, grandmother. It's very good to see you well." She doesn't even say anything for a moment as she looks over his face, grabbing his face with both hands, and then leads in and gives him a very tight hug. The grandmother says, "It is very good to see you well. Last time I saw you, you were, about 6? Sergeant Left says, 5, actually. The grandmother says, "You're looking very well, but can you explain why I'm on a ship right now and not in the Phoenix facility?" The sergeant simply moves his arm over and points towards the door. "Follow me. I'm sure you're hungry, and I can explain everything while you eat." He says this loud enough so that the command staff can actually hear him, and he looks over towards the commander, and the commander just gives a confirming nod. With that, Sergeant Left takes his grandmother out of the cargo bay, which everyone is almost confused at as she barely looks in her mid-20s. Sergeant Left says, "First things first, though, I need to tell you, you're a great-grandmother now. To triplets." This young woman opens her eyes again, turns to him and says, "How glorious! Are they boys or girls?" As the door begins to close, Sergeant Left is heard saying, "2 of one, 1 of the other." It is of note that at this point, many paid attention to the two as they left, yet the focus shifted quickly as something came out of the pod they were not expecting. One of the females was having difficulty waking up. The medical staff, of course, were prepared for this, having stimulants and everything else on standby, but finding out that one of the pods housed a prepubescent female? Well, this could be bad. This is not done, usually for good reason. Immediately, the captain had the XO get this girl's information and contact FleetCom because this was messed up. Something's wrong here. As the XO got the information and bolted out of the bay, one of the older females, visually about 20, turned to the little girl climbing out of the pod very, very, very slowly and with a lot of assistance. The woman walked towards the pod, staggering as she fought off the stasis herself. Yet as she got close to the little girl looked up and suddenly cried out, "Mommy!" As the two reached out and embraced, the captain approached. After introducing himself, he asked, "Ma'am, could you tell me why a prepubescent is in a stasis pod?" The woman turns and says, "Firstly, you don't have to call me ma'am. My name is Janice. Secondly, I had decided to raise her for the first few years, and then her father was going to take over. But when her father died in an accident, I didn't want her growing up with strangers since we'd already bonded. After my second, she joined me, and we have been together ever since." The young girl looked up and said, "Mommy?" "Yes, dear." "I'm hungry. Also, what's going on?" Janice turned and said, "Okay, sweetheart." After giving the captain a look, he turned and offered her to join him. However, there was one item that needed to be addressed. Since the footwear was elastic, it would be able to go over the young girl's feet, though it would kind of flop around as they were made for adults. The issue was the robe, which was designed for a full adult. Though they didn't have to worry, as one of the senior enlisted had already started grabbing the robe and using his knife to cut the bottom third of it off. It would still be a bit large, as in wrapping almost all the way around the child twice, but after taking the belt off and resetting it where it's supposed to be, well, it turned out to be functional enough. Inside the captain's mess, the XO had joined along with a few others of the command staff. After stuffing herself quickly, the young girl named Megan was a bit bored as the adults seemed to eat very, very slow. She didn't understand the concept yet of enjoying your food. The little girl said, "Mr. Captain, can you tell me why we're on a ship?" In spite of the glare from her mother, the captain just asked, "Do you think you can handle the truth of the situation? Do you think you're mature enough?" With a small smirk, she said, "Well, I'm probably older than you." The captain said, "All right, just let me know if this is all too much, and I'll stop, okay? Though before I fill in the blanks, I need to know where the blanks actually are. So, what do you know about human history when we first started dealing with other, alien, non-terrestrial species?" Little Megan thinks for a moment and says, "Well, when we met them, they wanted to experiment on us because, something to do with them changing themselves." "Yes," the captain says, "they had decided to use clones to try and extend their lives. This was how they had lived so long, sometimes millennia. A good idea at first, as they just used a quantum entanglement field to move their consciousness to a new body. But do you know where they messed up?" Not sure," Megan said. "Something about a copy, that's all anyone says." "Well, you're right," the captain said. "They discarded their original bodies in order to assure there was no cross-contamination from all the difficulties they had before. Though in doing so, they had no choice but to make copies of copies over time. After a while, they realized the degradation to their genetics, the blood, the stuff that makes them cells." Little Megan looked a little confused. "If it's an exact copy, then why would that happen?" The captain kind of leans back and smirks a little bit before saying, "There's no such thing as a perfect copy. At least not until very, very recently. Plus, it's an extremely slow process to make a perfect copy. Sometimes decades, almost a century, really. But if they can make a perfect copy, then why come after us?" The captain said, "Well, after all their copies of copies, they can duplicate things now, but they can't create children anymore. They can't make babies anymore." "What?" Megan said. "I don't understand. Can't they just grow them? I mean, I had a friend who was a tubie and he was fine." The captain leans forward a little before saying, "Our genetics are not so tainted that we can't do that. Although we've actually found out while you were asleep that they can't reproduce or have kids without help." Janice jumps in. "This is the first I'm hearing of it." The captain says, "You've been in stasis a long time. An artificially gestated human can have children with a natural-born human, though two artificials can't procreate. The fetus just doesn't go to term, and actually, it doesn't even get, if it even gets into zygote phase, it doesn't get farther. It just gone, done." "Oh my," Janice says. "Mommy, what does that mean?" Megan asks. Janice turns to her and says, "It means that the baby doesn't survive to be born, honey." "That's horrible. That's so sad." The captain says, "If it's so much that you can't handle it, we can stop here." Megan began to wipe her eyes a little bit and said, What does that have to do with the aliens? I don't... "Well, you see, young lady, they discovered the same thing. They can't procreate with themselves, but they can with us. Or more specifically, with you." "Why me?" Megan asked. "No, not you specifically, but human females in general." "What about the boys? Can't they make babies with alien girls, right?" "Well, yes," the captain says, "but there's a social stigma when it comes to aliens, and let's face it, guys are going to be guys on this one. And, yeah." Megan turns and looks at her mother before saying, "What does that mean?" Janice simply says, "It means that the aliens don't want the boys, just the girls." Megan says, "If the boys can make babies with the aliens, I don't see why." The captain intervenes. "You don't have enough living under your belt right now, not enough experience, and you're not quite old enough. I mean, I could tell you everything, and you would still be confused, at least for this part." Little Megan says, "Now I understand even less." Janice says, "Human males they're just too good. Do you remember how I told you how boys like to show off? Well, it's something like that." Megan thinks for a few seconds, says, "So that's why they hunt us so much?" The captain says, "Yep. Back when we got the technology that allows us to live so long, the aliens started taking young ladies like you and your mother. Have you heard of the old human gold rush?" Little Megan says, "Gold rush?" The captain takes a more relaxed posture as he said, "Gold used to be precious because it wasn't manufactured like it is now. Even if they could manufacture it, actually, yes, they could, but it was way more expensive than it was to actually just mine it, which made it precious. And when something is precious and limited, everybody wants to get as much as possible as fast as possible. You ladies became the most precious commodities in the universe, and every species wanted you. I mean, I'll spare you some of the more gruesome details, but we had to fight them off in back-to-back invasions for a long time." Little Megan says, "Couldn't you just stop the bad aliens?" The captain said, We were not powerful back then, not nearly as powerful as we are today." Janice interjects, "You sound like first generation." The captain goes, "Yep. I was actually retired when this all started. Ever since my nieces were brought to the house during the initial invasion, we've had to fight one species or another just constantly." Janice leaned forward with concern. "Your nieces, did the aliens?" "No," the captain said. "Oh, thank God, no. My house, though, ended up being, well, layered in lawn decorations, though. Of course, that's what happens when you use Sabbath and double-out buck on those stinking bastards." Janice then shot a look, saying, "Don't use that language." The captain realized and said, "Sorry for the language. I just get my nuts twisted thinking about what they wanted to do with pubescent and prepubescent girls." Everybody at the table had a look of sheer hate at that moment, and even Megan could feel the tension as she looked around at each of them, some of them getting flushed with red in their face, others going bleach white, and many simply gripping their forks or their own glasses to the point where, if they were made of glass, they would have shattered. Megan broke the tension by saying, "So, how are they doing, your nieces?" The captain relaxed in that moment and said, "Quite well, actually, once we secured the planet, though to do that we had to put you ladies like your mother to sleep." "Why?" little Megan asked. The captain says, "Those bad aliens, they pretty much stripped our planet of most of our females. And they also killed a lot of men. And in order to protect humanity, we had to take steps." Janice chimes in, "I'm not sure she's ready for this." The captain said, "Like I said, she can stop me." He then points towards Megan. "It's your call." Little Megan looks at her mom, looks at the captain, looks around the room at all of them, and says, "I want to know. No one tells me anything. They always want to protect me. I need to know." The captain says, "Okay. All right. Ladies like your mother are able to come out of stasis to procreate, to have children, to have kids. The burden of having children is on them. The matter of protecting them is on us. There's the major factor. No matter what we do, we cannot extend the fertility window." He realizes Megan is confused, so he continues with, It means that you ladies can only have a certain number of children over a certain amount of time. There's also to make sure that we assure genetic diversity, and the ladies are brought out of stasis every 20, 50, 100 years. It's on them, actually. They get to make the call. This assures that there's no inbreeding, thankfully, and they can still have their child and leapfrog safely through time. Megan says, that seems a bit much. The captain says, well, from the point of your perspective, I'm sure it is. But we tried to let things happen naturally, in a way of trying to get what we call normality. We had females out in the light with everyone else, and they rarely ever chose stasis. That is, until those aliens found out that we still had females that they could pick and choose from, and that our population was expanding. They just about bled themselves dry, trying to capture just a few, but by then we had begun to build up our heavy defenses. It should go without saying, but the species' governments were not exactly happy that we destroyed many of their largest ships before they could even get to Earth to get their prizes. You. Of course, eventually they didn't want to lose their own people, so they got smart and they decided to use something else. Janice chimed in and said, true, I was a little girl when that happened. My mother actually showed me how to use her .45 revolver only minutes before they sent in the dogs. Little Megan turned and said, the dogs? The captain said, yeah, artificially grown war beasts. A bit larger than the old direwolves, but just as dangerous. They were actually very well trained and trained to kill males like us and fetch females like you. And I put a few down myself when they came at us. At that moment, Janice held her head low and actually put her face in her palms, as she didn't enjoy the memory and she did not enjoy killing. The captain continued, saying, after that attack, all females were held in hardened facilities so they couldn't be threatened again, or so we thought. Little Megan said, why? Why, what happened? The captain said, well, it's the reason you're on this ship. You see, the other species can't risk facing us directly. If they do, they'll find out just how far we'll go to protect our women. Janice intervenes and says, oh, have you ever been able to get any back? The captain smiled broadly as most of the crew began to smile and laugh maniacally. The captain said, oh yeah. The moment we reached beyond the cradle of Earth, we started looking. When we found them, we let the men loose on whatever fleet, ship, facility, moon, or planet that was holding them. Most species have brought the females actually back as barter to have us stop killing so many of their people. Because, like I said, they had no idea what we would do to protect our women, or to just get them back. And once we got them back, our population began to rise again. Unfortunately, that made a few very angry and even more desperate, as they still don't know how to deal with the degradation, and they believe that we'll simply overrun them with population. Janice jumped in. So that's why they attacked the Phoenix facility? The captain responded with, that's our best guess right now. We're currently compiling the data right now, so the reason might be slightly different. Janice responded, how did they get through the defenses? The captain says, at great cost. He let that hang a little bit, but only a few moments later his datapad started signaling him. He pulled it out and it was blinking. He simply said, now, if you two will follow me. The entire staff stands up when Janice and Megan stand up themselves. They then walk out and follow the captain, and then they finally reach the observation deck where the ship comes out of FTL. They look around as they can see the carnage still being picked up all over the area. Earth's defenses, though damaged, are obviously clearly intact. The debris field from all the pirate ships is evident as large hulks of the ship simply float in space, sometimes only engine compartments, sometimes just crew compartments, and sometimes the crew themselves are simply floating in the vacuum. Even though they're close to Earth itself, it's still clear that even with the naked eye, there's many, many parts. The captain waved his hand for them to look and then spoke. They hit us with something crazy, a type of ship we'd never seen before. Think of it like an old-fashioned nesting doll. Their large ships that they came in were just layered and layered and layered with disposable armor, and this allowed them to get to the atmosphere, at least most of them. As you can see, that one over there, it got penetrated bad. It seems like it got skewered from both ends. I'm sure they didn't enjoy that. Of course, then they sent so many decoys as they went down towards the Earth that our computers are still trying to recover from the seizures, trying to target something. There was just so many. I mean, they played it very, very smart. And they must have practiced everything. For when they got to the surface, they had you all loaded in less than an hour. Those slippery bastards knew we wouldn't fire on the ships holding any of you. So once they actually got into the air with all of you on board, they scattered. The true saving grace, though, was the fact that they got the crap kicked out of them on the way in, which is actually how we were able to catch up with a ship that was holding you. Janice was out there looking at the destruction, something she had only heard about, but she had never witnessed. How many ships did they send? Those nesting doll types. The captain looks at his datapad and says, officially it was only 30, but I've heard reports that hint at 60 plus. They had to be planning this for probably centuries to have as many as they had, because it takes a long time to make that many ships, plus all the armor and everything else. And all this just to make landfall at 2 of the dozen facilities. The second facility wasn't able to be breached as the excavation beam that they used to actually dig into the facility had actually been destroyed by the time they got down to the surface. Janice says, this is amazing. I never would have... This is unbelievable. Megan started pulling on her mother's rose. Mommy, how did they build all those so fast? Janice looks down confused and says, what do you mean, honey? Little Megan turns and says, Mr. Captain said it only took a few years to make all those ships. How did they build them so fast? Seeing the confusion on how to put the words together on her face, the captain turns and says, I've got this one. He then kneeled down and looked the little girl in the eyes and says, my dear, how old do you think I am? Megan turned, got close to his face a little bit and said, 20, 30, maybe 40? No, you couldn't be that old. He says, my dear, I'm over 1,000 human years old. What? Little Megan says. The captain says, remember how I told you about those aliens cloned themselves? Well, we had the same idea until we found out what they did to themselves. When I was just a boy, cloning was a technology that frightened a lot of people, yet had the potential to save us all from so much. And it still does. Once we found out that cloning only works in small areas, like replacing an organ, we looked into other possibilities, and we found it in the past. You will learn about engines, waves, but most importantly, frequencies. We use these to rejuvenate and regenerate ourselves all the time. When you get to the surface, you're going to see a lot of young, fit, healthy people walking around. You're not going to see any old, yet many will actually be far older than you realize, at least until you get to know them. Little Megan thought for a second and said, then why don't the bad aliens use this frequency to do the same? The captain said, the degradation I told you about, it runs far too deep. If they had started it maybe an eon back, sure, it would have been not a problem. So there are old women that look like young like mommy? Yup, the captain said. A lot of them. They can just no longer have babies. This is... I'm not sure I get it, little Megan says. The captain stood back up as the ship begins to lower itself through Earth's atmosphere. Don't worry, your mother will fill in the gaps. But just remember that all technology has limits. Like if we were to say you needed blood, we could regrow your bone marrow, and your bone marrow will create more blood. However, certain parts of a woman, they don't create anything, not once you're born. Once you're born, certain things are set. We can't expand that any more than we can without using, what do you call them again, tubies? And once again, this is why you ladies are so valuable. Valuable to humanity, valuable to everybody. Soon after, the ship finally touches down, and massive crowds are there to welcome the women back to Earth, all about to have one hell of a party. The captain and crew simply wave goodbye as the women disembark off the ship. The ship itself can't stay because there's only one place for a ship to land and there's more coming in. The ship does remain, however, until all the pods are offloaded. These are expensive and very valuable pieces of equipment. After which time, the ship simply takes off, putting a shadow over the facility that is now being encircled by several rings of defenses to make sure, even if aliens do try to come down to these facilities again, there's not going to be much left of them when they hit the surface. As the captain gets back to the bridge reading his datapad, he goes up to the center console to check the data to make sure he has a good handle on what's going on. He then receives a message, looks it over, and then turns to the XO. Well, it looks like we're getting some extra liberty. Looks like it's a thanks for a job well done. The XO comes up. Shall we set course for Saratoga Station, then? The captain looks confused as he turns straight towards the XO and saying, XO, is there any reason you chose such an out-of-way station as Station 70? The XO perking up, trying to hide his smile, saying, I may have some intel about the 588th currently set there for refit and relaxation. I'm sure the Night Witches will give us a proper welcome. Besides, I hear Stephanie's ship is docked there. She always does put a smile on your face, sir. The captain retorts, just like Carrie does for you. All right, XO, set course. I'm sure after everything we just went through, we will definitely get a welcome, but I truly doubt any of it's going to be proper. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you for joining me on this not-so-short story today. Now before I go, I need to send out some special thank yous to a few of my supporters, and those will be MTF Guard, Erica Gem, Douglas Scarborough, Guardian Sage, SS Demon, Brian Kemp, and Prozac and Pancakes. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.